Hello and welcome to the Big 12 Mafia Show. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown, and with me are my co-hosts in crime. That would be Immaculate View and Gold Moen tonight. How are you guys doing tonight?
Oh, we're doing good. We're doing good. It's busy here in Scottsdale, so I'm a little amped up today. We'll see how this goes.
Why don't you tell everybody why you're amped up? Because the story to me seemed interesting. People are flocking to Phoenix because the
Yeah,
weather is so cold everywhere else, right?
yeah. I'm here in Scottsdale, and
Oh,
I'm.
Scottsdale, I
It's
mean.
all the same.
I'm
I mean,
sorry.
I'm sure everywhere else in the valley is getting nailed right now too.
Right,
But I'm also right here. I mean, within view of where they're holding the Barrett Jackson auto auction,
right.
and if I got up on the roof, I could see also where the golf tournament's going to be in a few more weeks. So a lot of people are coming here right now just for that alone. But then with the weather everywhere else, it kind of seems amplified.
I bet you the driving is really bad,
It's pretty bad right now, and especially because the highway going right through here is
right?
all being resurfaced.
Oh, fun for
Wonderful
you.
timing by the state of Arizona. Good job.
How about you, Moen? How was
Peace.
your weekend? Tell us why the gold Moen tonight?
Because we signed a new AD and he's going to bring us all kinds of gold from
Whoa,
Texas oil
okay.
millionaires.
I did read something about that. We're talking about Ohio State, and you got a new athletic director. The speech from your school president was pretty. It's like it takes a lot to become the new AD for Ohio State. Anything you want to tell us about him?
It is, but he's a new age type of athletic director.
Okay.
Um, Talking to Greg today, I told cash is king and winning is everything at Ohio State. So he has been brought in to basically bring in money, bring in money, bring in money.
I love that. That's great. So it's not so much an AD as he is like a carnival barker. Is that what you're saying?
He just makes money. That's what I know. That's what I
Okay.
was told. He was chosen because his ability to fundraise and network.
Okay. All right. Well,
He
sounds good
certainly
to
has
me.
that look.
And last and not least, to join us here is Wild Ute. How you doing, Ute?
What's up? How you guys doing?
Hey,
Good. Tell us what you got going behind you there, the
No kidding.
studio and all.
Yeah, man, I revamped the place a little bit as far as the studio. How's the sound, guys? Is the sound okay?
Yeah.
it's a little tinny, but you're okay. You might want to get some acoustic foam. I'll send you a link.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, but just revamped everything here. Got my K State flag. I got my Ute stuff, my Big 12 Mafia stuff. I'm ready to roll.
That's awesome. We're glad you're able to join us. It was a long weekend. Ute was off yesterday because of Martin Luther King Day, which is a very important holiday here in the United States. And so we're catching everybody basically off of a 3-day weekend. And that 3-day weekend was, I would say, tumultuous to say the least. We had coaching changes. We had players going all over and reevaluating their commitments. And then, of course, at the tip top of it is Jim Harbaugh, who's still at the University of Michigan, hasn't left yet, has interviewed with, I believe, at least two NFL squads and still hasn't taken a job. So let's just start right there. Jim Harbaugh has not moved. That is a surprise to me. I thought he would take the first train out of Ann Arbor after
Mhm.
the parade, and it would have been a done deal. What do you guys think about that?
You have to keep in mind there's a Rooney Rule in the NFL. They can't just hire the first guy they interview. They have to hire or have to interview so many minority candidates
Right.
before they can make a hire. So even if Jim Harbaugh is their first choice, they have to go through the motions, as it were, and interview minority candidates first. So
Okay. I kind of hope he doesn't go to Southern Cal. I want him to go to Seattle. I would love for him to be the next Seahawk coach to follow up another college graduate coach, which is the legend Pete Carroll. So I hope he doesn't go down there. In fact, the longer this goes, the longer these searches take, it actually encourages me that all these universities and pro programs are really diving deep, trying to find out what's different about these different hires. So we've gone from one guy who tipped the scales and maybe cheated a little bit and drew a lot of negative attention, to another guy that he's either a GOAT or a hero, and that would be Kalen DeBoer, who took the job from Alabama, or to Alabama from University of Washington. Let's talk about him for a second. In my opinion, he was never a Washington Husky. I think he played and spoke the words, but he didn't have the body language that I'm used to seeing up in Seattle, which is a lot more settled. It's kind of a different place to live in Seattle if you haven't been up there. So I'm asking opinions, and I'll start with you, Ute, and we can just go around. What do you think about this Kalen DeBoer, the way it all went down?
I think Kalen DeBoer is a guy that's going to be moving a lot. At Alabama, I'm kind of curious on how long he would stay at Alabama too. I mean, he looks like to me like he's gonna try the NFL waters one day as well. He's like a guy that doesn't really want to root down anywhere. Look at his coaching career, right? Like he's been at several different places: Indiana, Washington, and NAIA schools too. So he's just been traveling around, and he's got a great job right now. But I just have a hard time seeing him be in that position for 10 years, even if he succeeds. I think that he's going to be bouncing over to the NFL and then delving into those waters too. I just think that's kind of who he is. But as far as a fit in Seattle, yeah, like he didn't really have that laid back vibe that you see for a West Coast coach over there, like, like a Pete Carroll type of vibe or a Lincoln Riley.
Yeah.
Like who is this guy? Like he just seemed like a little bit more of a Midwest coach and stuff that's kind of focused on the next thing. I think that's just who he is.
What do you think, Mullen?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't begrudge somebody for moving up in the world. The Alabama job is a better job than the Washington job. That's no disrespect to Washington. Alabama is a blue blood. They've been a blue blood for the last 100 years or whatever. So you can't begrudge somebody moving up to make more money or take a little bit better position in life. Now, you want to begrudge him because he might have backed out or did some back channel negotiating or lied to somebody at Washington. That's fine. But you can't begrudge people for making more money or advancing further in life.
What do you think, Immaculate?
I have serious questions as to whether he ever felt kind of at home there. Not that they didn't make it home for him. Not that they weren't open arms. Just a guy coming from South Dakota, that area of the Midwest. He did spend a good amount of time there at the start, but he just had so much success at wherever he was at that there was always kind of an opening somewhere reaching down to bring him up.
Right.
So I don't know if I would judge him so harshly on the short terms. I just wonder if Seattle was a good place for him. I mean, granted, Washington's a great school and pretty sure he loved it there. I just mean as a whole, like the whole Pacific Northwest. It's a much different vibe than coming from the Midwest. And I know he was at Fresno State for a while. I'm really not sure how that went, but it just kind of seemed like this was done before he ever talked to his AD. Just by some of the numbers we're seeing, word was the number didn't even get up above 9 during their meeting, but then it came 9 million. But it came out after that from a guy who's pretty well connected to the school that they were willing to go even well over 10. It's just the conversation never went there. So it just kind of seems like it got cut off, and he already had his mind made up. And, one thing, like as Moen's saying, that's Alabama. Like when they come calling, that's going to mean something. But I think that it might have even been the case if it had been, say, a Michigan or whomever.
Yeah, it's a top 5 job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question, but does anybody think, look, we all know that the guy who just was sitting in the seat he has an office, probably right next to Kalen DeBoer. Nick Saban's still going to be there. Who wants to work under that cloud? I can tell you right now, in my entire life, I've only replaced one guy that had been in a place for a really long time, and it was extremely hard to get traction because I was being held to a standard that was never me, right? But that's what they're used to dealing with. And so, in my opinion, I think DeBoer is out in 3 years. And then you hire somebody you really want. And those were the people we were talking about last week. Not Lincoln Riley. Who am I thinking at Ole Miss? Lane Kiffin,
Kiffin, Dabo.
Sarkisian, Dabo Sweeney. I mean, what do you guys think about that? Did you get that feeling from him?
I don't think they want to follow up Saban. What do you want to be compared to Saban, or do you want to be compared to the guy that follows Saban that couldn't match Saban?
Right.
That's my worry for DeBoer, is that he's kind of that. Hate to draw on this talk, but the Northern sacrifice for the position that everyone else in the South was like, oh, hell no, I am not following up Saban. So, they brought him in, he was a kind of a brand new agent, or a new guy for the agent Sexton. That was a new pickup of his. So, I mean, and you can't deny, the guy's a good coach, so he might just succeed. But it just kind of seems like maybe he wasn't in on the whole thing that everyone else is in on, that you don't want to follow up the GOAT.
Right. Anybody disagree with that?
Yeah, I think they didn't necessarily not want to. They wanted to use the Alabama position to make themselves more money,
Right.
which they all did.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the names coming up were from great programs too. Texas is a top 5 job.
Right.
Florida State, Clemson, a little below top 5, but those guys, Clemson especially, Dabo Sweeney.
That's his joint.
That's his joint. He owns Clemson. Mike Norvell, they gave him more money to stay at Florida State, put more money into athletic department. So it's not like leaving. I don't want to offend anybody from Washington, but Washington's not a top 5 job.
Right. We're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Right. The other jobs were top 5 jobs. So it's a lateral move to go from Texas to Alabama, in my opinion. Going from Washington to Alabama is more of a bump up move.
You agree with that?
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious, like, what do you guys think about the top 5 jobs here? So, like, if we're listing at the top 5 jobs, I mean, are 2 of them really going to have been on the market, or going to soon be on the market in Michigan and Bama? Here, is Michigan a top 5 job?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Well, top 10 for sure.
Notre Dame, Michigan, Texas, Alabama. Who am I missing?
Ohio State.
USC. So it's 5 plus
Penn State.
Penn State.
That's what I'm saying. I think
Washington
top
about
10
the
is
same, I think.
really where I'm looking. Is top 5 is tough to pick. Top
Right.
10, I think you can find 10 that are pretty set aside.
I would say Notre Dame is an exception as well. They run in their own universe still. So I would say it's 5 plus 1, because at any time if Notre Dame came open, it would be the job to have.
Mm-hmm.
So
I kind of wonder what's Notre Dame paying. What's the coach's salary look like compared to Alabama? I mean, DeBoer's making roughly $10 million.
I think he's 9 or 10.
Yeah, I'm not sure of that, but it sounds about right. I do know that the pay wasn't necessarily a thing at DeBoer, right? We know at Washington, and this has been reported, they offered more money. They basically said, hey, look, we're here for you. What do you want? Kalen turned him down in November. So something, you might not have known about this job. I think Michigan probably was on everybody's mind. But he turned down more money in November. And so that's led University of Washington people to spin some conspiracy theories that he knew all along. Now, let's talk about Jimmy Sexton really quick. While you're doing that, I'm going to put up a new banner so everybody knows who we're talking about. But I know you, Immaculate, have gone back and you did some history on Jimmy Sexton. Why don't you take a couple minutes to tell everybody who he is and why he's important?
Well, he's either the preeminent or one of the top sports agents in the entire industry, not just coaching, but all of sports industry. I think somewhere of either 20 or 30 of the top 50 paid coaches in college football are all his. He has them like locked up. So when we're in a situation where this is going on, pretty much everyone who was getting deals out of that, they were all his. Right. He lined all that up. He used that. think he had Kalen DeBoer that Alabama probably wanted him from the beginning, but Saban also is one of his guys, worked with him to, give him, I think they gave him 72 hours to work his magic. We saw that number at the very beginning. He goes, we want to fill this role in 72 hours. That was basically Sexton, you have 72 hours to get as many of your guys' money based off this job as you want, and then we're grabbing DeBoer. I mean, that was.
And can you list the programs that some of the ones that actually directly affected?
Yeah. The first one that we got, if I remember right, was it Sarkisian, or wasn't there one before that got money? Well, there was Sarkisian, Norvell, Kiffin was in the talks, DeBoer was in the talks, and these guys put out stuff on social media saying like basically they were not coming. So there was so much talk about it that they were part of it. Now DeBoer had just gotten a pay raise maybe like a year or two ago, so he wasn't really in the running for that. But it was DeBoer, Sarkisian, Norvell. There was talks about the guy up in Maryland.
Right.
I don't know if we ever got any announcement. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a pay raise out of this. So there was about 3 or 4 of his guys that all went 10 million plus. And so, that's going to be a really nice payday for that guy. And I'm talking about Sexton because he's getting a piece of all of those. And now you're talking, side guys that no one will even talk about, the secondary coaches that get hired on, how many of those are his?
Right.
I mean, he's got his hand in the whole thing. He's kind of a kingmaker in this regard.
I can see you're kind of waiting with pensive
see
breath. What do you want to say about all this?
Yeah, Jimmy Sexton's like this power broker, behind the scenes and stuff, like making things happen, right?
Right.
I'm just kind of curious if indeed he was making deals and getting everyone paid more money and stuff and playing everybody off each other, like a Sark, like a DeBoer, like DeBoer. What kind of collusion are we looking at here? Seriously, I mean that might be an issue right there if there's any of that kind of stuff happening, and you wonder if there's any type of legal liability there too. If he gets investigated, there was text messages amongst these parties.
Right,
and
they were.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
That's why I'm laughing, because he might be the power broker over here, but I would think that there would have to be some checks and balances in that system. And if there isn't, then it seems like collusion central.
I mean, if Alabama wanted DeBoer from the beginning, then really it's, in a way, it is all kind of disconnected. It's just he had knowledge. He knew what the deal was, whereas everyone else doesn't. So when you're thinking, oh, we might lose Sarkisian to Texas or to Alabama, you're Texas, you're saying, all right, here's an extension. We need to keep you because you are getting it done.
Especially after a playoff run, right?
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
And, when you look at Texas and kind of what's happened there in the recent past, Sarkisian has finally made Texas be Texas.
Right.
I don't think that's arguable, but some might. Norvell at Florida State, he's been there since 2019. This is at that point where you either go all in with him or you let him go. And they went with an 8-year deal, $10 million. So they went all in for Norvell, a Sexton guy. Kiffin staying where he is and all that. But if this doesn't work out with DeBoer, I think you're looking at one of them. Another Sexton guy is possibly then coming in to replace. So he's set up pretty good in the future. You can find the listings of who all his people are. Some of them are at schools you wouldn't even think much about, like at Western Michigan. He's got guys all the way down through the listings to bring up, to replace, to move. It's really a long-term plan, if you ask me. I mean,
it sounds like Lee Steinberg for athletes.
Yeah, I mean, it's
because he had Jordan, he had Steve Young, he had everybody that was, Aikman, he had Irvin. I mean, you can just go down the list of all of his top. He's just so much control in one guy. You say checks and balances. I can't imagine what that would be.
I'm not sure what that'd be either, but
right.
But if I'm a school and I'm kind of digging into that and I want to know, what's driving up the market, maybe I'm doing some research into that too. It just seems like a little bit off to me.
I like that idea of research. You could decide not to take one of those coaches because you don't want to be.
What are you
part
going
of
to
that
do,
mess.
right? Maybe when you fire him, that's when you go back to Sexton, try to get some more money from Sexton.
Let's get some super chats in here. First of all, Lonnie Johansson, thank you very much. $2 says, "Good afternoon, guys. How are you doing tonight?" I think we're all doing okay, Lonnie. We made it through the weekend. Watched some NFL football playoff games, which we might touch on a little bit later. But we're really glad you're here. Thank you very much for the super chat. Let's get, and I know I'm not going to get to all these because we're already over 200 comments. So I'm just going to say hello to some of the first people that came in the door. David Floyd said, "Let's hope not." Is that an answer to a query? Because he's the first guy in.
I think is the answer to your question in the title.
The Big 12. Yeah, okay. So that was a tease. We're going to get to that, I promise. Glad to have you here, David. Mr. Monkey says, "Casting for Chrome. Hello from Ice Apocalypse Corvallis." So you guys are in the big net like me and you are. That's pretty good. How are you doing where you're at, Moen?
It's colder than Billy Hell.
Okay. All right. That's pretty good. Thank you for being here, casting. Let's see here. You had a bunch. BR's in the house. Good to have you here, BR. Timothy Green says, "Great content as usual. Always enjoy dropping in and listening about a little college football and or whatever may come up." Yeah, we are kind of whatever come up kind of show, but we're glad you're here. Daniel Gygax says, "Hi, everyone." RFR Mac, who's a Ute, says, "Well, let's go." All right. We're getting started. Let's see here. Laura Wise says, "Hey, y'all." Let's see. Don in Kansas says, "Big Money Moen is in the house." Conundrum says, "Tucson 6 o'clock news. Excited about Brennan's arrival." So let's use that as a stepping stone to our Arizona news. So everybody knows, or maybe you don't know, Jedd Fisch is now the University of Washington head coach. That happened quite quickly. I actually predicted it the moment I heard about Kalen DeBoer. I thought he was the automatic choice to come in, but so he left and he's now at University of Washington. First, before we get off that topic, do you guys have anything to say about that move? Except I will just add one note. He took like 90% of the coaching staff with him, and he's taking at least 15 or 20 starting players with him. So what do you guys think about that?
I think that's the nature of the beast now. That's the world we're living in right now. The same thing happened with Washington, right? Yep. And it's funny because then, it's just like Washington became Arizona or is becoming Arizona. Has Fafita declared? Is he staying or going?
His father put out a very emotional post saying, "We're loyal people." So
right, and McMillan seems like he might be staying too. But I think that's just the business we're living in. I'm not surprised that he took all of his staff. I mean, that's what made him successful is that staff that he built. Right. So if you don't bring that along with you and stuff, there's no consistency that you're bringing along to Washington to recreate the same thing. So it's too bad how that works today, especially with the transport portal, because you could have a national championship team, Washington Huskies, that gets gutted completely, loses your coach and your coaching staff, and then you're sitting with nothing. Luckily for Washington, in this case, they do have Jedd Fisch, but it's just wild how a roster and a coaching staff can flip in a matter of hours now, where it used to take months, like years for a program to deconstruct, but now it's minutes. That's the world we're living in.
Moen or Immaculate, you guys have any?
Yeah, it was a good move. Again, you can't begrudge people for moving up. Washington does a better job than Arizona when it comes to football. He's making a lot more money. His assistants are going to be making a lot more money. And he gets to move up. I mean, it sucks. I get it. It sucks. It sucks to have your coach leave you, especially after they've brought you. I mean, for Arizona, a lot of people were predicting them to win the Big 12 next year.
Yeah, that was transformational what he did
last year. It was transformational. Yeah. And now he's leaving for Washington. When Kalen DeBoer came to Washington, it was in shambles. Within 2 years, he had him in a national title game.
Right. Lake had run it into the ground.
Right.
He was trying to destroy the program.
Transformational. So it hurts when those guys leave your program, but again, they're moving up. I can't fault him for moving up.
I would say with Fisch, I just think it's probably because of the things he said. I think these coaches really need to start to watch what they say a little more closely and realize you may not be around. Now, I know they got to say these things in the moment to get their teams to play and all that, but I have no problems at all with his coaching staff going with him. I mean, that's the guy that they work for. That's the guy that they know. That's the offense, the defense, what they're going to do. If you stick around and stay behind, that next coach coming in, he might just fire you anyways.
Right.
You see that quite often. So I actually think that makes a lot of sense for those guys to just go with, and for the new coach to come in and maybe bring his guys in. And now these moves are going to be more, whole staff wide. That might actually make more sense. But in terms of the players, I was expecting a lot to leave. And I know you said that. I'm not sure if that many have said so yet. It's actually starting to look like the players of Arizona might be the ones to stop the insanity, kind of, to some degree, to say enough's enough. We don't care who our coach is. We are the team. It's us. We are Arizona. And if that happens, much respect to them. And quite frankly, I'm kind of going to have a hard time not rooting for them next year.
Yeah, your nail's immaculate. That's a really good comment right there. I mean, this is like a new movement right here, this player-led movement saying, we love the school. We're going to stick with the school. It looks like it's moving that way, at least. And no matter what, right? You wonder, though, like, you can say that, but at the end of the day, when someone's offering you like maybe a 6-7 figure NIL deal, if you're McMillan or a Fafita and stuff, like how far does that loyalty go? Like, well, that is to be determined. But if they end up sticking around with this new coaching staff, then they deserve massive kudos. I think everyone's going to be rooting for them because that's showing some serious character and heart.
And I would say the future NIL involved with that could be more than any of us can actually even project right now. I say just be true to yourself. Do you have a great season next year like you were projected to? You're still having a good coach come in. You're going to have a staff. You guys know who you are and what you are. If they do this, they stick around, and Arizona still stays at the top despite losing their entire coaching staff next year, that's a major storyline. And NIL money is going to come in. So, and that's national NIL money. That's not just like your local, regional, the usual stuff. That I actually think that they could maybe even make more doing that than they could at Washington.
Moen, you don't have anything to add to that?
I don't begrudge people for moving up. If somebody's going to make a pay, like, great loyalty's great, but for some of these kids, it's life-changing money.
Right.
Especially, some of them coming out of poverty can't say no to $1 million. They want to provide for their family, their mom, who, they want to buy her a house, they want a nice car. Now, if we're getting to the enticement where they're showing up and driving a Lamborghini, like a certain player did at Texas this weekend, then I have a problem with it. That was ridiculous.
Aren't we reaching a point, though, where there is no limit? Didn't Michigan prove that if you're not cheating and successful, you're not going to keep your job for longer than 3 or 4 years?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, all the rules are thrown out now.
All the rules are out the window now. I mean, Ohio State's enticing players now because why not? What's the punishment?
Right.
Nothing's going to happen, so you might as well do it. But, I mean, just with the Lamborghini situation, I'd never give a kid a Lamborghini. A 19, 20-year-old kid, he's going to drive that at 200 miles an hour and disintegrate. Just like them kids from Georgia. So I have no problem with giving them money, but I would not use cars and things like that as an enticement.
Let me interrupt really quick. We want to keep this conversation going. I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. We're at 100 people watching us live. It's exciting times here at Big 12 Mafia. If you haven't been paying attention, we are also going for a larger brand. We're going to be the College Football Mafia eventually here. And everybody's going to have their own shows, and Big 12 Mafia will be one of those. We want to encourage everybody to continue watching us. We're a live family, and I want to encourage everybody to be a part of that. There was a special put out yesterday by the Wild Ute that's currently open to members only, and I don't know if I can even see it without going to. Let me see if I can find it on the main page. So I was going to show everybody what it looks like. Yeah, I can't even see it for some reason. It's here. I know it's here. Let me look at videos. Oh, here it is. I found it. So let me share the show. This is what it looks like. This does it fit Florida State to the Big Ten? Shows about 20 minutes, but it's only open to members. So we're encouraging everybody we are pushing memberships. I think it's important that everybody knows that we have them. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to put specials together. They're going to be open to members for the first, what do we decide? 48 or 72 hours, guys?
We're going to do 96.
96 hours, which is 4 days, right?
Hours. Yep.
Okay. So, and that might change, but right now that special is going to be open for 2 members only for 96 hours. So 4 days. And we encourage everybody to do that. If you don't, obviously you'll see it in time. You'll be able to watch it by this next weekend. But we do want to encourage that and let everybody know that we are putting out more product. A lot like Greg Flugar went to. That's we're doing some of that stuff. So I want to thank everybody who's been a member and want to encourage everybody to continue to stay with us. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, and then follow us all on Twitter, and make sure that you're aware when our shows are going to be popping up. All right, let's dive right back into this. So I'm gonna ask a question. This is open for everybody. I don't really care who goes first because I want to see everybody's reactions when I say it. So, is the Big 12 becoming a feeder league? Okay, so this is going to be emotional for a lot of people. We're a Big 12 show currently, but we cover all of college football and all the news and everything that goes along with it. So for Ute and I, it's a personal question, but I want to go to the guys who really have no dog or pony in the show and see what they think first. So Immaculate, that question is open-ended. What is your answer to that?
I think we're in the process of finding out right now. I think you could bring up examples of why it will be, but I think also you could bring up examples of why it won't be. I'd say this leads right into at some point a conversation about what was said at Arizona about why they're picking the coach they are. And that's so that it's a coach that isn't necessarily gone in another 3 years. Well, what I definitely think is happening is they are going to have a change of mentality. They're going to have to adapt to the new rules, so to speak. To some degree, some schools, they might embrace being a feeder. And up-and-coming coaches, they might know that about that school and be willing to go there because they know they can maybe get out of there quickly and easily and painlessly. Other schools that want to build up a culture are not going to do that. And they'll try to find coaches that might want to stay there a little bit longer. And I think we're just going to have to see this play out. We're seeing with the ones that are moving a lot. And then I'll bring up a guy at ASU with Dillingham. Him being of the area, of the school, might be a little more loyal. So we're going to have to let this play out a little bit and see. But I definitely think it's possible that you're going to see a lot of movement up and through the Big 12, which could raise it up if you're getting all the great coaches coming up in and through there and learning and formulating while they're having that experience. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it's tough. People are going to have to maybe get used to that. And the players are going to have to get used to that and maybe be a little bit more loyal to the school and a little bit less loyal to the coaches. We'll see.
And let's define what feeder means. I didn't do that at the beginning. Feeder, we're not talking about relegation. We're not talking about changing the way conferences work or the college football playoff. We're not talking about any of that. What we're talking about is the reality that when coaches move, they're usually from lower. You rarely have a P5 to a P5, right? It's been in the past that once you're at a top school, and I would say that would probably be only about 15 schools could claim that, your coaching staffs are at the will of the openings in those other schools and conferences. So you're basically growing a coach, and if you do well, there's a good chance they're going to get a job offer to move up. Like we just saw Brennan is now the coach at Arizona. He was at San Jose State. Can I just tell you, San Jose State, fine university, but has not been exactly the bellwether in college football at the G5 level, right? So he was the one that fit their mold, though. So when we're talking feeder, we're talking about players and coaches both moving up as these opportunities present themselves, as Moen has mentioned a couple of times now. So Purple Orca, that answers your question, I hope. Did you want to add anything to that, Immaculate?
I would say, I think the word was that Brennan was actually in kind of the final look that they had at Arizona when they picked up Fisch. So he was someone that they were aware of, they already knew, and he didn't move from where he was. So he was still there for them. So it's kind of more of a safe pick of, okay, we need someone who's going to stick around for a little bit. And, you know, he doesn't have like a stellar record at San Jose State, but it's San Jose State in the Mountain West. That's not a power. He actually did a pretty good job of getting them into bowl games and being respectable and playing. And I watched him a few times, and they looked pretty good. So I don't think it's a terrible hire, and I think the mentality behind it might prove out to be right. And I think it's just these guys are going to have to reconfigure their thinking in terms of who you hire, when you hire, and you know how you do it.
Coaches all start somewhere. So
Yeah.
It's not like everybody starts at the top. So it's not a bad thing to have your coach taken. In fact, it's a really good thing. It says your programs run well, but it leads to destabilization. And Moen, you are at the tip of the spear. Being at Ohio State, our respective schools are respectable, but they're not Ohio State. So I know you have an overarching idea about all this, but tell everybody why maybe this isn't the worst thing in the world if it's true.
Well, one, I think you only become a feeder league if you allow yourself to become a feeder league. I think the Big 12 has to take steps to prevent that. One of those things is when you have a successful coach, making an expensive buyout. You want to keep Lance Leopold, make the buyout $25 million.
Yeah, I don't understand why they don't do that. Why don't they do that?
Because they're afraid that they're going to have a bad season and they have to let him go and they're on the hook for $25 million. But if you want to keep your coach, make that an expense. And there's going to be schools that, and Ohio State might come along and say, we'll pay that $25 million. But you know what? Then you have $25 million to invest in your athletic facilities. It's a free $25 million. You can bring another coach up. You've got $25 million for him to work with in athletic facilities. So, I mean, you only become a feeder league if you allow yourself to become a feeder league. So I think the Big 12 needs to start taking a look at it and say, how do we stop that from happening? Well, the first step to stop that from happening is we need to increase the buyouts for these coaches. So in these new deals, they need to have more expensive buyouts. So the mid-tier schools like an Ole Miss or a Mississippi State doesn't look at a Big 12 team. Because they'd say, hey, I don't want to pay Lance Leopold. We can't afford to pay $20 million to get Lance Leopold here to start to go Mississippi. Now, the big schools are always going to be able to pull, but they're going to feed from anywhere and everywhere. So, I mean, you're never going to stop that. But what you need to stop is the mid-tier schools from feeding on you. And like I said, punitive buyouts on them, that would help. Doing more with NIL to secure your players for long-term deals, that would help.
All right. I appreciate that. Casting for Chrome, $1.99 super chat. Thank you very much, Casting. We really appreciate your loyalty. And thanks for being here. You're a great friend of the show. All right, Ute, I'm going to go to you, and I'm going to bring up this article.
Yep. Pull up the tweet. Will you pull up the tweet from Stuart Mandel?
I will. I'll do it right now. Yep.
I'm going to take a big swig, too,
before
we get into this.
Let me turn this off. Okay, you have the whole screen to yourself, bro.
So we needed to talk about the subject. This is an important subject for anyone that loves the Big 12. My Utah Utes, my K-State Wildcats, Bombers, BYU Cougars, your KU Jayhawks, your Mountaineers, your other Cougars. I mean, this matters so much to us. Are we becoming a feeder league? And there's pointing right now that's going on from the likes of the national press. You can see here from Stuart and Mandel kind of pointing at this too. As the dollar disparity only grows wider, Everyone else is becoming a feeder system for the Big Ten and SEC. So what we're talking about here is the gap. We're going back to this dreadful gap between the Big 12 and where the Big Ten and the SEC is. The Big Ten and the SEC are going to be making, going forward, over $70 million, over $75 million in annual media distributions, whereas the Big 12 is $31 million. That massive bridge there of over $40 million, that's the bridge amount, is going to go to paying coaches more money, assistant coaches more money, likely players more money. They're getting paid well over double what the Big 12 can pay. So as far as tying a financial incentive to Big 12 coaches, players, and stuff to stick around, I don't think that we can compete in that realm. The question is really feeder league. Is the Big 12 a feeder league at the moment? Not at the moment, but it can easily trend that way if we're not careful. I implore every Big 12 fan out there to consider one thing. There's one thing that we need to think about, and that's how do we bridge the revenue gap between the Big 12, the SEC, and the Big 10. That's the only solution. There is not another solution. It's not, in my opinion, it's not buyout money or anything else. It's about making yourself more valuable. So that's on Brett Yormark's plate. There's really only one way to do that in my mind's eye, and that is actually attacking the ACC and going very, very aggressively after the ACC and working that and bringing ACC schools into the Big 12 to make more, to renegotiate the contract so you're making more than $31 million a year. Yeah, I'll be honest with you, $31 million a year is just not enough. It's not good enough to compete at the highest level. It's not. It is feeder type money. We need to make more as Big 12 institutions. We need to be aggressive about that if we're serious about winning championships here, because we just can't compete for coaches, soon to be players, and everything else, and infrastructure on a university. It's life or death for the Big 12. That's how I see it. And we have to, the only solution is bridging that gap in any which way. And the most easy way to see that is actually going after the ACC, eliminating the ACC or diminishing the ACC. So that media contract's off the table. The Big 12 offers better rivalry games, better brands too. And we can actually bring up that $31 million a year figure. So it's never going to be completely in line with these other guys, but power too, but it needs to be more in line. And that has to be the number one thing that we're all thinking about, especially in the offseason when we can talk about it. We have to bridge this. It's the only solution if we don't want to become a feeder league. So I've got massive concerns about it. And I know everybody else probably does too. It's not discussed that much, but it's a big deal, guys. So what are we going to do about it? What's Shormark going to do about it? And it's got to be item number one on everybody's agenda here.
Immaculate.
What I think needs to happen is that they need to somehow disconnect the players from the coach. In the past, including in the present, all recruiting is done by the coaches. And so when the coaches go, and now when you're going to have completely open transfer portaling, you're going to lose a lot. It's because that's who they're loyal to. What we're seeing at Alabama is Saban is becoming kind of a general manager. And I think that this is a new position that's going to be pretty widespread. He's just kind of blazing the trail.
He's in between the team and the administration.
Yeah, it's like
a super AD.
Yeah, well, the AD deals with a lot of sports and
Right.
the whole athletic department. The general manager is just going to be like the AD's person that just deals with all the football stuff. So that way they can deal with the whole thing.
Okay.
And I think, when you have like a Saban there, I think that's going to do a lot of the recruiting for Alabama. It's not going to be DeBoer, as people are saying in chat. He's not very good at that. He's a great coach. He's not a great recruiter. So that kind of seems like that's why he was the pick that Saban wanted, because Saban's still going to run all the recruiting out of there. So that way, if they do lose him, they can keep players. And I think that might be the trick. And maybe if Big 12 schools want to get ahead of this, they need to start being at the front of that. You need to figure out who's going to be that general manager that's going to run all of the recruiting, that's going to make those players come in and be loyal to the school more so than the coach. So if the coaches leave, the players don't want to leave because their person that they know, the connection they have, is still there. I don't know, just kind of my thoughts on it, because as I'm listening to this saying, this doesn't end. If the connection to these players is always to the coach and the coaches leave within a few years, it's a kind of a never-ending spiral, and that's probably not great for the Big 12. So I would say they need to go all in with this whole general manager idea.
So I am son of history. I love history and how it affects individuals and groups. And one of the things that I've studied a bunch has been the Roman Empire, right? Which originally started as a republic. Originally, and this little history minute from Bomber for a second. And it does apply, I promise. So when it was started as a republic, all the soldiers originally were volunteers. And they came in from the fields, kind of like the cowboys did to fight off the Indians. They would come together to defend or in some cases, get aggressive to try to take land. But they were beholden not to the state, they were beholden to themselves. Then a guy named Marius comes along and says, hey, look, we need this to be more organized. And to do that, we make everybody is available for the draft. That means all the plebs, all the people that are also that have no land at stake, they're also going to be drafted into this system so that we have a constant return of investment. And again, that was the Republic. When the things started to change, and I would say in this case in college football, when it's starting to change, is when the captains, the Marius, eventually the Caesars, the soldiers were beholden to them, and they didn't care about the city of Rome. They cared about getting paid, and who paid them was the generals, people in charge. So what you're talking about here, Immaculate, is disconnecting the soldiers from those guys who would pay them, right? Make them more beholden back to Rome, and care more about holistically the Roman Empire than they did impressing any one general. And that's really important. I think it's maybe possible, but at this point, when you have so much invested in NIL, so much invested in a coach, and you're paying him $10 million, for heaven's sakes, a college football coach. I'm an old man. That blows my mind to imagine that amount of money. And until there's some way that we can insulate the coach from the players, and maybe there is a mechanism to do it. I don't know. I can't think about it right now. But I agree with everybody here. I think the system is the way it is. The Big 12, I'm going to put that brand back up. Is the Big 12 becoming a feeder league? I think unless everybody takes and pays attention to what Ute says, and everybody takes attention and pays attention to what Immaculate brought up in ideas, and then takes the history that Moen has brought up, unless we have some higher thought from administrations, especially ADs. I think right now this is all falling on the AD because there isn't anybody in between. There's nothing that's going to stop it because the money is just going to continue to roll in. I've seen comments as we've been doing this. I know Becky put up one. In fact, let me bring that up really quick. Becky put up one that I wanted everybody to see. Let me go to it. I'm sorry. Oh, that's not Becky's. Oh, I lost Becky's. I marked the wrong one. I apologize. Becky basically said the SEC right now in the Big Ten can get any coach they want because of the disparity in money that Ute has detailed. So until that changes, I don't see how, Big 12 schools can go more than, I don't know. I heard Kleeman was offered 7. I think that's a stretch for Kansas. But I don't know what changes.
I have a fear too, Bomber. I have a fear that going forward here, the Power 2, the SEC, the Big Ten are going to be using the Big 12 basically for its own plucking grounds, right? And then the Big 12 would be using the ACC or the G5 for plucking ground, and you're going basically a tier. But there's essentially a class system that's developing where you've got an upper class, a middle class, and everything else. And right now, the Big 12 is kind of finding itself in that middle class area, which is better than the lower class. It's much better. It's not the worst place to be, but the question is, how can you win national championships and be nationally relevant when you're that far behind financially? And that's the only solution, is to bridge the revenue gap. And that's difficult.
And
when
go
you
ahead,
don't have
Immaculate.
State.
I was just going to say, I think when we start seeing players getting pay from the athletic departments, coach pay is going to go down. And if coach pay goes down, some of the impetus to move is going to go away. Now,
why do you think coach pay goes down?
because there's only so much money, and so much of that money is going to start going to players. Like, look at the NFL. Who makes more money? Coaches or
Coaches
players?
that win.
Coaches or players? Who makes more
Oh,
money?
players make more money.
That's what I'm saying. Like, the disparity right now is so imbalanced. But as it starts to come into a little bit more balance, now I'm not necessarily saying that college players are going to make more than these coaches. These coaches in college do a lot more work.
Well, what are you imagining the players are going to get paid?
Honestly, I don't have an exact number to look at. I don't know, but any
Like
amount of
$5, like $10 million. I mean, there's got to be a range. It's in your
I
head.
think that there's probably going to be a baseline number, like a minimum number that they all make. And then there will be some ability to add on to that for certain other players. Now, how that comes into play, I don't know. I have no idea how that's coming into play. But I do think that they're trying to bring all of that in-house. So that means that they're going to have to pay from the house to the players. You know, that's
the universities are trying to bring it in, or the NCAA wants to bring it in?
Oh, the universities. And I think that might not be a great idea. I know Moen's really pushed on that from the conference. I don't know that answer. I don't even pretend to. But somehow, yeah, if money that is currently going to coaches, some of that has to be used for players, well, that's money being taken away from coaches. And if there's less money in that, then to some degree, there's going to be less impetus to move. There's going to be less of a gain from here to here. Because those places that spend a lot of money on coaches, they're going to be spending a lot of money on players. So I actually think that might actually balance the coaching situation a little bit more. But then we're going to have a whole nother problem on our hands in terms of, you know, how much a school can pay a player to play there.
Let's get some super chats in here. Cleveland Rocks gives us $5. Good to see you, Cleveland Rocks. It's great to have you here. He's one of our members. He says, Ute, you are absolutely correct about raising more funds. Amazingly, Kleeman and Leopold turned down Washington. And then he asked an open-ended question. Also, any new realignment news? I have been in contact with my Florida State band, and I didn't have anything to report. Jen thought she might check in with the show tonight. I was hoping for a report on Florida State. But do you guys have anything to answer that question from Cleveland Rocks?
I think so.
Yeah, please.
Speculative, of course.
Go ahead.
We have a date when Swarbrick is leaving Notre Dame.
Right.
I have posited that I think Notre Dame is in pretty heavy with a couple of schools in the ACC with what they're doing. I think Swarbrick has done everything he can to try to place Notre Dame in a position to where it can survive and thrive the changes that are coming. For him to have set a time, like this is it, this is when I'm leaving, I think it means things are in place. And I think it means he feels comfortable enough to leave. And I think that means you can look at that time, which I think they said is in March, and say other things are going to be in place by then. Because Swarbrick is right in the middle of it, so he knows. So I don't think he'd be leaving if things were still kind of in flux. So to me, when I saw that, that was, you know, my radar went up big. It's like, okay, what else is going on with that? What announcements do we have with that? You know, both him and the chancellor are stepping down. Now, the chancellor will still be teaching at Notre Dame. He's just not going to be the chancellor. But that's a lot of change at the top. That kind of signals a new age there at Notre Dame. What that means, I don't know. But
I was going to say, you think Swarbrick would leave and move to a conference to somebody else?
No, but I could see him wanting to be like, say there was a college football czar or some type of position like that, because he's going to be seen as kind of an independent person, as long as he's never at Notre Dame when they're a full member of a conference. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Did you have anything you wanted to bring up realignment-wise?
Well, there's no new smoke that we're aware of realignment-wise with Florida State, but if you caught the video that Balmer and I put out yesterday, doesn't fit. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time, especially with the Big Ten wanting to pursue Florida State. There's so many reasons for it. It makes so much sense. Everything's checking out that way. So while nothing today, it's again like we're on the clock with it. Also, to Cleveland Rock's comment, one thing to keep in mind too is while Kleinman and Leipold, they turned down Washington, will Leipold turn down Michigan when that job comes up? Or is it going to be Sharon Moore's? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen there. But a Michigan job so, elite, desirable, top 5, like we talked about earlier, I don't know if anyone can turn it down again. So it's basically any new job that opens up. It's just like these Big 12 coach carousel we're talking about. Even like they're all interviewing. It's just nuts, Like it's hard to have any kind of stability with your coaching staff right now. It feels like as a Big 12 institution.
I would agree with that. Moen, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, going back to your Roman Empire analogy,
right?
The way to make them loyal to the state is to make them conference employees. Then they can't.
Right, which you've talked about for a long time.
Yes. Then they can't follow their coach to the Big 10 or the SEC. Right. They are in the Big 12. They are Big 12 conference employees.
We're going to have a show, or at least a short, to explain exactly, because we've been doing this, now almost 9 months, and we've spoken about it in pieces, but we've never actually presented everything together on that Moen. So we're going to need to do something to make that more clear so people know what you actually mean. We know because we talked about it among ourselves, but I don't think anybody else does. So, let's spend some time. And
my show is going to be named Moen Explains It All.
There we go. I love it. Another super chat. This one's for $9.99. Thank you very much, Daniel Gygax, who's also a member. Glad to have you here. Great call out. He says it's going to be impossible, even with the removal of the ACC. The Big 12 will make $70 million a year. The Big 12 doesn't have Bama, Ohio State, or Michigan to help with viewership. I think, am I reading that wrong? Is he saying they will make $70 million? Because I don't think any of us are saying they're going to make $70 million.
Yeah. So Daniel, I understand your point, and you're right. I do agree that the Big 12 in this day and age isn't going to be making $70 million a year. Like you're 100% spot on with that comment and everything. But the question is, how can you get to 40 or 45 million? Because like the financial gap right now is almost a 3 times financial gap. And every dollar you close that gap makes your life a little bit easier. Then along with strategic development through your mark and branding and stuff, you might be able to grow for the future more. But right now, the gap's so wide, we're not even looking or talking really anything close to 70. Can we get to $40 million? Can we get to 50? Is there any which way we can get to 50 if we gobble up the ACC? Maybe 45, possibly. But that just makes life a lot easier to pay coaches. And again, players are going to get paid here over the next couple of years, and to pay players too, because there's going to be no salary cap. And we're going to be in trouble, in big trouble, because that's going to come out of your athletic department revenues, paying players and coaches both. So the question isn't how do we match it? The question is how do we bridge it more?
I'm going to just interject just a second. One second, Immaculate. I just want to interject that I did do what would I call it? A data dump conversation with Bob Thompson over the weekend. And the news was coming fast and heavy with all the players and coaches moving. I had a lot of open-ended questions for him, and he was very kind and answered a lot of dumb questions from me, and I really appreciate him doing that. But I'm not going to go into the detail of that because a lot of that is on our background. But what I will say is that he thinks that if your mark can come up with a way to get to 45 or 50 million, I think I said actually 40 to 50 million, a way to make the appearance to the world that the conference is worth 40 to 50 million a team, that would go a long way to securing itself in the A3 and not the A2 +1. And I think that's a big deal. We need to have that in our minds, especially if you're a Big 12 person, that some of this stuff is in our control. And if there's a way that we can make the conference as a whole more appealing, and that would be definitely raping and pillaging the ACC. I think that definitely has to be one of the number one things they go for. But everything else, who knows where it turns out. So anyway, wanted to share
I think what he's saying with this is even if with the removal of the ACC, the Big 12 is making
Okay.
$7 million a year, they don't have those brands.
Right. I got you.
And I would just say to folks, like, I understand the sentiment and I cannot deny it or refute it. I just think that we are right now at the start of something new and something different, and we don't know how popular it's going to be. We don't know how popular this Big 12 is going to be. It is different. It is much more balanced. It's going to be fun. I'm a Big 10 guy. I've never cared that much for the Big 12 at all. I care about it now. I'm interested in it. It's different. I don't care that it doesn't have a major in it. In fact, that kind of makes it fun. Like, I want to see who can rise up out of that. I don't care if they have 2 more losses than anyone else. I really don't. That's why it pisses me off what's going on with the CFP, because I don't want to see a Big 12 team who had to fight all year long and scrap through it. I don't want to see them kept out because I think that they're going to be tough. So I just say I get the fear and the worry, and it's all valid. But I think we have to see how this plays out to some degree. And I'm not saying for a long period of time. I'm saying like for the next 2 years. Let's just see what happens in 24 and 25. It might turn out that people love the Big 12. And you might find that your viewership numbers skyrocket, because if you watch a Michigan game, per se, against a weak team, it's like 3 million people watching. If it's against a big team, it's a whole lot more. It's not just Michigan fans. So you could find that some of this general viewership might shift. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, something's got to be done, but it may not be as bad as everyone thinks. And if the Big 12 was to add a Clemson and a Pitt and a Louisville and say a Miami or whomever, your number is going to go up from that. If with basketball, look, NIL is going to change basketball. A lot of these guys that were one and done in the past, they're going to stay. And your college basketball is going to get a lot better in quality. So there might be more money in that. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I think that there's options there for the Big 12.
We'll answer this question. The Big Lubbock, we know these schools are making more than the 31.7. We're not talking about those because those are basically the credits they get from the basketball and any CFP. What do they call it? It's
It's
the
just
CFP
credits.
money that's dribbled down basically to
Bowl
the
money
different
too.
conferences. Yeah,
Bowl money.
right. So that gets you to 44 million. Eventually, it'll be about 50. They thought in 2 years, but that is not the number anybody pays attention to. The number everybody pays attention to is the initial media value, and right
Because
now
that's a fixed dollar amount. That's fixed, and you have to keep in mind, well, the Big 12 made 44, and a good chunk of that came from bowl money and everything else. Guess who else is getting bowl money and NCAA credits? The SEC and Big 10. So it just keeps growing, and like you have to look at the fixed rates that they're going to be getting. And that's what the average annual media distribution is. That's the 31 figure we're talking about. So just to clarify that.
Mo, you haven't said anything for a minute. I took your time just a minute ago. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, not really. But I mean, there's opportunities for the Big 12 to make more money. With the Pac-12 going MIA, you're going to need somebody to fill that late night slot. That's an opportunity to make money. Scheduling non-conference games with bigger brands, that's an opportunity to make money. So there's opportunities out there for them. It's going to be a situation where you have to nickel and dime. You're going to have to fight for every bit of money you get. You're going to have to scrap. You're going to have to make deals with WWE to do WWE sponsorships.
Right.
You might have to do things you don't like, but I think your mark has already said, he's on that path to where he's going to try and maximize. He's going to highlight the positives and try and hide the negatives and maximize the profitability of the conference.
Sarge, the Big 12 Mafia enforcer, are officially named enforcer. I would say Devil Frog is more of an administrator at this point. He's gone up the chain. But Sarge is our enforcer, and he says as long as the Big 12 has a top tier enforcer, and he's thinking of Utah because that's his school. That is all that matters. I will volunteer for that. And
that's Sarge who's going to be our enforcer.
Sarge. I love it.
Yeah, thank you, Sarge, for the super chat. And hey, Sarge, we're not giving up. Us Big 12 fans, us Ute fans, we're not just going to lay down and just take it from the SEC and Big Ten. We're going to fight back. So we're talking about this. We got to bring tough things up. We've got an issue right now. We don't want to be a feeder league. It could happen. We need to figure out how to make it not happen here. That's what we're trying to do. And there are solutions. We can bridge that financial gap. And with the end results of winning national championships to build our schools up, that's what we all care about. I would desperately want the Utes to win a national championship. In football, they haven't really gotten close, right? In the P5 era, at least, when they were G5, they had a couple undefeated seasons. But that's my dream. I would love to see that one day in my life and everything. And I want to see the Utes have a shot at that. And we need to bridge the financial gap. Your K-States, your KUs, we all need that so we can be competitive. And that's what we're talking about. And we're going to enforce that. I love it.
I think Utah is the example. Look what you've done in the PAC. Like now, some of your payouts in the PAC are all the same, but not all the money that you make is the same as a USC or an Oregon. I mean, they made more money, but it didn't matter. Utah still won. There's ways to get it done. It might be a little trickier. It might be a little bit difficult to get it figured out, but once you do, like Utah was winning year after year after year. So it's not impossible. It's absolutely possible. I just think folks have to kind of look at the future and say, yeah, this is going to be tough and difficult, but you have a new model. And I would say embrace it and run with it. And you might just surprise yourselves with just how good it is and how much like the general viewer embraces it down the road.
It's interesting because now that BYU is finally back in a real conference, it's been many ages since I felt they were in one that mattered. You know, it used to be BYU and Utah cheered against each other always. But that wasn't the way it used to be when they were in the Mountain West and when they were in the WAC. These teams, you cheer for each other until you fight each other, right? And that's where the mutual respect came from. And we lost that. We lost that sort of echo that reminded us what we're really here for. And this is exactly what Ute said. It's all for one. Every Big 12 school better be dialing up the action and trying to put the best thing on the field. The basketball, we have 8 teams right now in the top 25. That's never happened before. There are 350 teams in NCAA basketball all playing the same level, and the Big 12 has 8 in the top 25. So let's make that the thing. Let's sell it in the off season. But when it comes football season, we have got to double down and do whatever we can to promote those rivalries and get those time slots as much as we can so we can show off how good our football product is.
The greatest thing that could happen to the Big 12, I'm serious, guys, this is kind of tectonic too, is the downfall of the NCAA tournament in basketball. All the revenues that tournament generates and all that they take devalues our basketball revenues that we bring in per school a lot. And so if that ever fractured and the A3 broke away and did its own tournament and the Big 12 got a bunch of teams in that tournament, that's a way to bridge the revenue gap because the basketball is really good in the Big 12. So that's an idea there. So like things that are a little atypical, you know, that's the kind of stuff that we might need to happen to really bridge this thing at the end of the day. But for basketball wise and everything, really the NCAA tournament's gobbling up most of the cash that really the schools deserve to be getting.
Immaculate.
Oh, I was just saying earlier about how kind of Utah is basically the blueprint of how to get it done because they did it in the PAC. Well, you know, when you're starting off, you're making less money. You're not making the same in all the other aspects. I mean, yeah, there's TV money that's the same, but that's not the only type of money that the athletic department brings in. And Ute's own video points that out. So it's in those other areas where I think that the Big 12 really needs to focus in on and find ways, those other ways, and maximize those other ways to get money.
Sorry, I'm chatting with
Good.
Sergeant Pickles.
Just say on top of that, it comes down to, like you're saying, it comes down to making folks give a damn about you.
Right.
You're talking about merch sales. You're talking about all these other ways to bring in money.
Right.
It's not just about TV money. That's what, 25%. You can boost in other ways. If the competition is across the board the best in that conference, people are going to care. I don't care what other people are saying about, oh, you're not the P2. It doesn't matter. It really does not matter. It just matters. Like if you build a product where everyone across the board is competitive, that means everyone that's in your conference, like people at all those other schools, they actually care. You think people care all that much about Indiana football at Indiana? You think people care about, I don't want to use any SEC schools because they're kind of crazy for it, even if it's Mississippi State, but or Kentucky. But, I mean, I think for a lot of the schools in the Big 12, you've kind of been living in the shadow of the Oklahomas and the Texas to some degree, not all the time, but that's gone. Like now everyone can kind of live up to their own potential, and I'd say go for it. And you might just surprise yourselves as to how much other people embrace it.
Anybody else?
Let's get to the super chat here.
Let's get some comments. So super chat first. Yeah, this is from Cleveland Rocks for $2. Thank you very much, Cleveland Rocks. How little G5 earns makes the Big 12 look rich, and in turn, whatever the Big 12 makes the Big 10 look like it's a small shed of a tier in the amount.
Isn't that all relative, though? It's all who you're comparing it to. That's a good point, Cleveland Rocks. Like, it's true. Big 12 makes a lot more than G5 schools that are making like $10 million a year or less. But it really comes down to what's your school's goal. And if you want to win national championships, then that just isn't going to work. Like, you have to bridge it. And so really, is it just to be competitive a little bit? Is it to be mediocre in the long run? Or is it to win national championships and be the freaking best in college football? That's what I want.
Replica, who's a member, thanks for being a member there, Replica. He says they say the Big 12 have to win on the field, especially in non-conference games. Schools like Texas Tech can't let Oregon off the hook. Yeah, that was painful. That's all. I think Oregon was overrated all season. So, yeah, that was painful. Any comments to that, you guys? It's a great
people
comment,
still saying Oregon was the best team in the Pac-12.
Yeah, that's true.
No, who's saying that?
People still say it. Yeah, they lost twice to Washington, almost lost to Texas Tech,
and they're still in it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Your Big Lubbock
power of a brand.
Big Lubbock says he's also a member, and we appreciate that, Lubbock. He says Yormark said his goal was to stay within $25 million per school of the SEC and big schools. And if you just take what my comment was from what Bob Thompson told me, he said if they could get from 40 to 50 million, that initial money, not the bonus money that comes from the basketball and the college football playoff, but if they can somehow, some way get to 45 or 50 million, the entire world, all of media will look at them differently. Right now, it's a perception issue as much as it is anything else. It's money, but even big schools have limits on what they can spend. So, this is a question for my Big Ten people in the house. That's anybody who's listening right now, or the two guys sitting right below me right there. If anybody except for Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State,
USC.
I'll throw, USC's new.
Nebraska.
USC, Nebraska, maybe Iowa is on the edge. Any of those other schools, and we'll put UCLA in the other school list. Any of those other schools, if they call, is everybody dropping their hat to take the call and get on a bus?
No. It's actually my worry for Iowa right now is once this regime, if they're calling it quits after this year, I'm really not sure what they're going to get. Really not sure who they're going to get. It's not everyone, and it's not like the lowest in the Big Ten can call upon the highest in the Big 12. There's much more overlap than that. It's those programs, whatever conference they're in, that's been happening. The coach carousel, as we've been called, that is not a new thing. That's been going on. But to Ute's point, it's just been sped up. It's all happening so much more quickly now. But it's not a new thing. So I wouldn't worry about it as much. It's feasible. It's doable. And I think they'll figure out how to get this right so that maybe people aren't moving quite as much. But yeah, it's you're not a complete feeder to the entirety of the Big Ten or the SEC.
Well, consider
what do you
this,
wanna add
that
to that?
the gap is not nearly as wide in the current state, right? We're talking about the forward look going into next year. That's when the new media contracts are kicking in.
Yep.
So looking at like the Pac-12 versus the Big Ten over the last 5 years, why there was a difference or wasn't as substantial. And now it's like a 2.5 to 3 times difference. It is that substantial. So a big concern of mine would be Vanderbilt coming after Utah's coach because they've got 3 times the amount they can pay him. So if you're money driven and it's all about the Benjamin, then you're going to take that, even at Vanderbilt. That's the concern. That's what a feeder league. That's what we're talking about, guys. Like, and I guess like I don't mean to be paranoid or anything, but I think that's a reality we have to look at. Not just the top end jobs, but even the low end jobs that we might get plucked unless we can bridge that gap. And like Big Lubbock's point, if we can get within $25 million in annual media distributions, that'd be about $50 million a year. We're currently looking at $31 million a year. If we can get to $50 million a year, that's a huge jump to fight back a little bit and bridge off your Vanderbilts or your Indianas, your Purdue's.
It's Moen.
Yeah, your question is, would somebody come running from the top of the Big 12 to the bottom of the Big 10?
Exactly.
You have to realize those guys are at the bottom of the Big 10 for a reason.
Right.
A lot of them don't spend money on football. Indiana just got burned because they spent money on football. They spend money on basketball at Indiana. That's what they're good at. Northwestern does not spend a lot of money on football. Minnesota does not spend nearly as much on football as, say, an Ohio State or a Michigan. So you're going to lose some of that appeal from this pure cash prospect. Nobody's going to come running from $10 million in the Big 12 to a school that's only going to pay them $4 million in the Big 10. So the schools at the bottom are at the bottom for a reason, because most of them don't invest in facilities, NIL, anything like that. They don't.
Yeah,
The only people I would say that would take that job is somebody that's near the end of their career and they want to go get a payday. Loyalty to them is, hey, I've been at five schools, one more, and I can cash out in 3 years at $5 or $6 million at Indiana. I could see somebody doing that, but I don't see somebody in the middle of their career doing that.
And remember, you got to actually look at real numbers, not just TV numbers and the money they all get the same from that. And I know I've seen in graphs from years where there's a pretty wide disparity in the amount of money that the athletic departments have available to them between schools in the Big Ten, between schools in the SEC. They don't all have the kind of money it would take to pull from a top half school in the Big 12. They just don't. Vanderbilt can't pull your coaches. They actually don't have the money for it, nor the desire to even do it. If they did that, they'd actually face heat internally. So it's a little more complicated than that. So it's not as bad as people think, where any school could do it. But but that is a good reason to try to stay as close as possible, so it stays that way.
Another comment here from Big Lubbock, and this has been every Big 12 person that even knows anything about athletics. They're concerned. I am not worried about losing football coaches to the other leagues. I'm worried about losing your mark. That has to be real and present in everybody's mind. They need to pay him whatever he wants to stay.
Hey guys, since we're on this topic still, and I'm a numbers nerd and everything.
Sure.
Okay, so we're talking about the SEC schools making roughly $75 million a year in media distributions.
Okay.
Okay, I'm looking in the 20. This is according to the athletic department for Arkansas. Just pulled an SEC school, Arkansas, in 21 and 22, from 2021 to 2022. Their media rights distribution was $37 million, guys. They're moving from 37 to 75. If you don't think that's going to have a massive impact, that's reality. That is absolutely factual reality right there. And so Arkansas is going to be able to pay double what they were paying before because they're going to have the pocketbook for it. And that's concerning and sobering.
It's definitely sobering. That is true. Oh my gosh. Just way to say that word, because that sort of brings everybody down right at the same moment. Before we move on to another topic, is there anything else you guys want to talk about this Big 12 feeder league? You know what I think's funny about it is that we're not talking about the ACC at all.
The ACC is so screwed.
I think that's like a reality, right?
The ACC is like the others, right? We're talking about the upper class, the middle class, and the others. The ACC is in its own world of hurt that's so far worse than the Big 12. It's not even in the same land.
Well, the Big 12 had the pain first. Pac-12 was next. Everybody knew the ACC would be next, and yet they had their head in the sand. And this was all brand new information to them the moment Florida State put out their lawsuit. It's crazy how history just continues to repeat itself. None of that new, by the way. Schools moving conferences, it should not shock people. All right, let's move to another topic. So let's see here. We talked about Jimmy Sexton. Jen didn't come up, so I don't want to really bring up any FSU stuff because I've heard a couple things, but I haven't been able to confirm them. So I was hoping Jen could do that. I'm going to try to get her on the show tomorrow night. She wasn't confirmed tonight because they have a show going. But yeah, we need to talk about ACC and the lawsuits, the status of that, and maybe catch up with our Doug Rohan as well. Maybe for Friday. I'll talk to Doug and Jen and see if I might be able to get on tomorrow night and do a Florida State ACC day. Anyway, let's see here. Where else do I want to be? Let's just go straight to comments. Are you guys okay with that? Did you have anything else you wanted me to bring up?
Definitely.
All right.
No. Comments. We love them.
Okay. I'm getting to it. Jeez.
Comments. No.
Don't yell at me. Let's see. Let's see here. All right. So question and answer time. Let's get some good questions. You can pull them over too, right? You're logged in as an admin?
I'm not today. I apologize.
Oh, geez. You got to come on because every once in a while I could drop off. I need somebody here to cover for me. Let's see here. Mr. Monkey says the Big 12 really cares about football and basketball. You tell them why that's maybe not the biggest thing you should be doing.
The Big 12 really cares about football and basketball. I think that that's pretty good focus as far as like how to maximize your revenue and stuff, and even better than that is attacking the ACC and perhaps even hiring old Big 12 Karen to do some subversive stuff like she did with the Pac-12 guys. I've told you before that I was on the other side of that stuff that was going on in the social media space and elsewhere. It was wild stuff, like crazy stuff. It was good. It was really good from the other side. But now I'm part of the Big 12 Karen team, and we need to go and do the same thing to the ACC.
I love that. That's fantastic. Do you want to do a quick thing about gift memberships, Moen?
Yeah, gift memberships. It's really great. Gift memberships, people from the community benefit. We all benefit. I take a pull off the bottle when we get gifted memberships. So I benefit. So that's the most important thing. But if you do receive a gift membership, make sure you thank the person who gifted it to you. Click on the little gift icon when it pops up in the stream, and that'll let you claim it. So make sure you do that. You can also get there through the membership page. Make sure you opt in to receive gifts.
Let's see here. Becky Go Husky says if the Big 12 can get $7 million for the largest matchups and stay over $1 million for that late night FS1 contest, it will go a long way to get more money. Agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I think that the late night time spot is something that the Big 12 is going to take advantage of. I think Friday matchups, getting creative on days, is another way to drive revenue. Stuff that like you don't necessarily want to do, but they're revenue drivers, revenue streams. So late night games for sure. The Big 10's they're the Big Ten's going to take a lot of those late night games too, with Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA. There's going to be quite a bit of competition there with those schools, but still an opportunity that wasn't there before as far as a revenue stream with the new schools added to the Big 12. So it's a great idea and everything. So it's one way to do it.
I think you guys are going to have to be kind of agile. You're going to have to be prepared to have your games moved around in certain windows, because you're not really going to know as well as other conferences, like who's going to be your power teams from year to year. What games should we pick to have played in this time window on this day? And when they don't know that far in advance, that means your game time, start times might change, a couple days before the game. And so your fans are going to have to be accepting of that, because that might be how you can maximize in order to make sure you get your best matchups on TV. Because you may not know, except, week to week, who you actually need to have on. So I think if you can get deals and be kind of accepting of that and understanding that, you may not know as much in advance of who's going to be on at what time. So just, in your scheduling, just be prepared for changes to be happening. I think you have to have them in 12 days before the game. And that's probably what you're going to see a lot in the Big 12.
Moen, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, you're going to have flexibility, and you're going to have some teams on. You're going to have some matchups you might not like to see. You might get a lot of Colorado, but Colorado is a ratings draw.
Right.
So I mean, there's probably going to be a lot of people who are sick of Deion Sanders by the time the season's over. But you have to understand that he's buttering the bread for you. He's
money.
Getting those viewers. He is getting that money for you. So.
It's the same thing. The Big Ten is Iowa. We know we're going to see a whole lot more of Iowa State and Michigan and Penn State than our team, because they're the ones that bring in
Washington and Oregon and USC.
Yeah, it's going to be worse. But we know as Iowa, that's where we're getting our money, and that's just you accept it, and you get on the Big Ten network, you get on, maybe on Peacock, you get on these other things. So maybe Big 12 needs to figure that out too, is some secondary ways for people to see their teams.
Let's talk about that really quick. Over the weekend, we had a Peacock only NFL football game. It was who was it? Kansas City.
And the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, Miami, and it was only on Peacock. And people were bitching and moaning about having Peacock and buying it and everything else. But once they actually started watching it, they're like, "Oh, this isn't actually that bad." Turned out to be there was over 25 million people watched this game that they couldn't find otherwise. So I found that pretty remarkable. Did you guys notice that too?
That was shocking, actually. I did not think it was going to pull a number like that. And there was a lot of folks that signed up the week of the game. Right. I think they got like $5 to $10 million, like 10 million subscriptions. Don't know if those will hold or not, but that is remarkable stuff. And just get used to it, guys, because now that they put that number down, how many more games are going to be on Peacock or Amazon or Netflix or whatever, right? I mean, This is like the model for like playoff games and stuff, and even maybe college football games. So,
yeah,
I don't love it.
I give everybody a tip on Peacock. Black Friday till the first week in December, they offer Black Friday sale, $19.99 for the year.
Believe me, that is a bargain. There's so many scripted shows on Peacock. I have Peacock because I have Comcast, so it comes with my thing. But I would pay for it. It definitely is worth the programming. Just Yellowstone by itself would justify buying a couple months at least. Anyway.
I like the movies. I like it for sports. You get a lot of sports. My brother uses it for racing. He likes racing stuff. So.
Really quick, we want to let everybody know that Amelia Islanol gives out a gift, and that gift went to Larry the GM. So Larry the GM,
nice.
Make sure you shout out to Amelia Islanol, one of our members. Thanks so much for doing that. Gifts are great. It's a thing that people just continue to repeat. You get a gift, give a gift, and it's the gift that keeps on giving. Anyway. Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Amelia. This is a question I wanted you guys to get to. Brandon Unruh, it's a really good question. College football needs a commissioner, just like the NFL. Player salaries from schools should also be a fixed amount adjusted yearly. NIL should be viewed just like endorsements are. Let me just start with Moen on this one.
No, they don't need a commissioner like the NFL. You've seen how well it works for the NFL. Player salaries should not come from schools. It should come from the conference. NIL should be viewed. Yeah, NIL is just endorsements. So, but I don't think schools should pay salaries, and then conferences should.
All right, Immaculate.
What I do believe college football will get, instead of one person, it will get the A4. And the A4 will eventually here have a whole hell of a lot more power to wield, but it'll never truly be one person. Now, maybe like at some point in time, they might vote in a Swarbrick, but I don't think they give up their power. But I do think that we will see a very large centralization of power here shortly.
Yeah, Immaculate, I think your nails on that. I think that we need some type of commissioner at the A3 or A4 level to provide governance, right? Because the NCAA is not doing it. It doesn't make sense anymore in the NCAA's. The way that they govern just doesn't fit major college football anymore. There needs to be a complete breakaway. I think most of us realize that. And it needs to be governed by a commissioner, and there needs to be agreement about the governance rules between the leagues. That just needs to happen.
If I may, real quick on that.
Sure.
The convention with Baker and his plan, they pushed that forward, saying they need Congress to help them. Congress, on the other hand, is putting forward a bill that is the exact opposite. So what we're looking at now is they're not going to get that help. And remember, they can't vote on anything again in the NCAA, really, except for at the committee level, until next January. And also another thing happening next January that we haven't talked about is House versus NCAA. They do not have time. If this is not going to work, they're going to probably have to hand over power to the A4, because the A4 can act at any point in time. They don't have the same restrictions. So I think this year we're going to see it. I truly do. I think the A4 is going to get power they want, just like in 2014 they did the same thing, and by 2015 they actually had the A5 created and built and marked out. I think we'll have that, probably the same thing happen, and the A4 will be a lot more powerful, and things can happen much more quickly when that happens.
Yeah, definitely. And then going back to this comment too from Brandon. So player salaries, I agree with Moen that player salaries are probably going to be paid at the conference level. Just think about this, guys. It's not that complicated, but in a CBA collective bargaining agreement, if you negotiate a proportion of the media rights, you can say 50% goes to the players, 50% goes to the school, and the conference can allocate that money respectively. So I think that at the conference level, it makes plenty of sense, and it's going to be a portion of the media rights. And I think that's something that we'll see in the future. And NIL should be viewed just like an endorsement. I agree with that too. I mean, NIL is not going away no matter what. Even if we're paying players directly from the conference level or school level, NIL is going to be there always, and there's no way around it. It's just how the free market works. You have the right to go, get endorsements as an athlete.
I agree with everything you guys have said, except for I'm still torn about how the players are going to get compensated. I don't think the schools pay them. I think maybe there's some collective bargaining they could do with the conference. But I also think that there might be something put in place that superimposes over all of them and puts in a salary structure per position. I think that could also happen. So I don't know. I do believe the NIL and endorsements should be the same thing. In fact, I would say they are the same thing right now. I don't know how they're treated differently. The NIL I've dealt with, either they're paid directly and it's taxed, or they're paid indirectly and it's not taxed. It's not real income incomplete. So I don't know about that piece, but it's a great question, Brandon. Thank you very much for being here. Summit Hawk gifted us another membership. Thank you, Summit Hawk.
And that's when I knew I was dealing with a badass.
That of course is.
Well, can we get a Jayhawk squawk for Summit?
Jayhawk squawk is what that's for. Thank you so much, Summit Hawk. That really is the gift that keeps on giving. We really appreciate you being here, and it's great to have you in the family. Mr. Monkey says, I'm really looking forward to Big 12 BYU Utah.
I'm not sure, Mr. Monkey. Oh, you're not the only one looking forward to that. I think Bomber, licking his chops. So am
I
I.
cannot wait.
I'm not sure how we're gonna even do a show, but like that week, there's just gonna be so much tension.
Oh boy, it will be tough. It will be.
We're gonna have like 2 shows going on at the same time because you guys will not be able to be in the same room.
Isn't the schedule they
play
play
weeks
the
you're just not gonna
30th?
get along.
Aren't they
Who do we
playing
get in
the
a
30th?
divorce?
Sure.
I thought
Who do
that
we
in the
get?
schedule came out that they were playing the 30th. Or was
They're not
that
going to split up you and me, are they, Moen, when they get divorced?
Oh,
I'm not splitting you guys up. You guys can split up yourselves.
No,
I'll
I
make
was
sure
saying, like, when you guys get
it's gonna be
divorced
awesome.
over that game, we're not going to get
No.
split up.
No, that's not going to happen. We're not going anywhere. We still love each other, just hate each other for some stuff.
That's just part of it, right? Yeah.
It is. It's a healthy respect on my regard. I'm not sure that's for everybody else, but it really should be. It should be.
Mr. Monkey, we've talked about this a long time ago, but I think that there's ways to maximize revenue too, and like making an event. These type of rivalry games, I think that they should be played every once in a while in Las Vegas. I think it should rotate BYU, Las Vegas, Utah, BYU, Vegas, Utah. I think you really need to maximize these and put them at a neutral site, like every third time. The game.
They would fill the Vegas dome.
It would be nuts.
That would be crazy. Wow. I actually like that idea. I'm not against that. I think we could work on that on the show. I like that idea.
It all comes down to revenue, like how much you make there, and you're splitting that one. So it's not. Doesn't seem like it wouldn't be possible. Like it might be difficult to do, but it could be possible.
Adam Ontiveros. I hope I say that right, Adam. He's gifted another Big 12 Mafia membership. Thank you very much.
I could just
for that,
sop
Adam.
you up with a biscuit, nature.
That was picked up by John Dowie. So John Dowie, thank Adam. That was very gracious for him to do that tonight. Another question that I don't know how you guys are going to take it, but I saw it and I liked it. Best thing for all Big 12 fans to support and only watch Big 12 games. I think it's a futile endeavor. That's funny you said endeavor. Be happy you survive over the Pac-12 ACC. As a Big 10 fan, I mostly watch Big 10 games all Saturday. What do you guys think about that?
He's not wrong,
but he's not.
But they also need to draw more. Like, look, there's a lot of weeks during the Big 10 where some of the games you're like, yeah, I don't really need to watch this one. And if there's a big matchup on in the Big 12, we're watching all year long to see who's going to come out on top because we just don't know. I'm probably going to click on the Big 12. And if when they take that number, because it happens at a certain time in a game, and I happen to be watching the Big 12 game instead of the Big 10, I'm going to be counted as watching a Big 12 game. You just have to get people to click over. Like, even if it's just switching, hitting the last button and going back and watching them, you can. It's funny, but you can actually affect your numbers that way. You just got to get people to pay some attention.
You're absolutely right, Immaculate. BYU and Utah fan know all about this. We don't want to boost their numbers, but we can't help it. We have to click in anyway. So we tell ourselves for a couple minutes, no, I'm not going to watch that BYU game at all. And then you're just like, I can't stop. And you jump in and watch it. You give them that view. So it works. But like, hey, you know what? In a perfect world, the big fans wanted to revolt and say no more college football. We're not watching anything but Big 12 football. That would actually be a big benefit to the conference. That's what Big 10 fans do. They watch Big 10 football. And like they don't really care as much about other football. They care about Big 10 games and other Big 10 games, and everything's Big 10. So if the Big 12 pulled the same kind of card, you're taking viewership from the Big 10 and the SEC, and plus boosting your Big 12. So it kind of makes for a miserable college football life, though, I guess, in some ways. But it could be effective.
It's very true. I think it is very true. At the end of the day, trying to game the system so you get views and minutes. I don't know how they measure all that crap. Just watch the games that are important to you, right? And the Big 12 just needs to raise their profile. They need to make Kansas and Texas Tech a big game. They need to make these off games, UCF, BYU. West Virginia, Utah. Those games have to be big games for us to draw big numbers, and I think they will. Utah and BYU are going to be just fine. Wherever they go, people are going to watch them. But it's these other programs that seem to struggle. And not to call anybody out, but I think Houston probably has the most ground to cover in this regard. I know there's a lot going on in Houston. It's a pro town. It's hard to get focused, but in some way we need to break through there as a conference to maximize. The only reason Houston was invited in the first place was because of the recruiting ground. It's too rich to ignore. So you bring them in, they've got to start bringing numbers. And I don't know, your mark's got to be working on that Houston market, I think, all the time, in my opinion. It's got to be.
You got to give them some time. They've been a part of the AAC. Now they're now they're in the Big 12. And the Big 12 has had how many Texas teams in it for so many years? I mean, there's always so many schools that were above Houston, but now they're up there. I'd give them 5 years, see where they're at in 3 to 5 years. I think that they might surprise folks.
Moen, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's pretty accurate what Immaculate said.
Okay. Gary Chadwick says, can't wait for the Holy War. Either can we, Gary. I wish we were playing next week and every week after that. But, it's a little ways away, unfortunately. Edward Wayner, another new viewer, I believe. Gary Chadwick was as well. Does a deep competitive Big 12 have attendance upside for each member to raise revenue? Would adding an SDSU or Tulane to go with Orlando and other fun cities make visiting teams travel and spend more? That's a great question, Edward. It really is. And we talked a lot about these type of things, moving pieces during the summer when realignment was really hot. It's a great question. We can answer it now too as well. I'll give you my answer first of all. I think San Diego, in my opinion, I wanted San Diego to come into the Big 12 because I want to go there in November. I want to go there when it's cold in Utah.
It's a good reason to invite San Diego.
So if that's a good reason to invite a school, great. Make that happen. But
they got a good stadium too.
They do, but we've seen now their basketball team has stayed steady, but it's going to be tough for them to reach where they were last year. And their basketball team last year was atrocious.
I'd say the same thing about San Diego State that I just said about Houston. If you bring them up to that next tier, that next level, you give them 3 to 5 years and see where they're at that point. But I think they got the potential.
That's that word potential. You, Ramon, you want to add to that?
Yeah, with San Diego State, that's an interesting case there because the Pac-12 they had an invite out to San Diego State if they could land a contract, right? San Diego State was about to get the call up. They were right there on the knife's edge, right there. It sucks for those guys. It really does with all the stuff that happened with that program and them not wanting to commit to the Mountain West. Remember all that saga 6-9 months ago that happened. But the question now, and I think there's something to the point too here, like, yeah, it'd be awesome to go travel to San Diego or New Orleans or wherever. And that might be an economic benefit for those cities and stuff. From the Big 12 standpoint, I don't see really San Diego State or Tulane really adding to the pie. That's the problem here is everyone's trying to add to the pie. We're already talking about that $31 million revenue gap. And if you add more members, then you dilute your shares, your existing shares. You're not getting much more television slots to put those games in. And you're not really driving a lot more value because you've already negotiated a media contract. So I don't see that really being a big win for the Big 12 right now. You're talking about some massive brands like a Clemson or a Miami. Those are game-changing brands that could maybe pop a renegotiation of your media contract and add more value, plus offer you an upside of going to a cool place like Miami if that ever became available. So really, that's the name of the game: is what can you lift the boat, and certainly not knock the boat down and stuff. And the boat's $31 million a year, and that's the question we all need to ask and everything. And unfortunately, it sucks to hear, but that's just kind of how I see it.
Did we do a spot when we started on San Diego? Did we do a breakdown about San Diego?
We did. Yeah, a long time ago we did breakdown and everything. And as far as viewership, everything that we were checking out, San Diego State was kind of at the bottom edge of the spectrum. But we were really putting them against Pac-12 schools. They did add value to the Pac-12 for recruiting territory. And frankly, if the Big 12 ever added San Diego State, me as a Ute fan would be celebrating huge because the Utes have a massive recruiting footprint in California that's completely lost now in the Big 12. So having an inroad would be a big win for this program. So I'm not going to object to it. But that was the reason for keeping San Diego State, is to have a SoCal presence for recruiting for the Pac.
I would encourage everybody to find that video. It would be probably in June of last year. We haven't gone back and done playlists for those, but I know we did a breakdown of San Diego State and their realignment value. I'm just not sure which episode it was. We'll move to the next one. Let's see here. Buckshot Kid says, the Big 12 Mafia Network 9 days ago, you gifted me a membership. Thank you so much. You're very welcome, Buckshot Kid. We're glad to have you here, and thanks for being part of the family. We hope you renew your membership and stick around, because we're only going to add more content. Believe me. Yeah, I can't say. I was going to say something, but I can't say it right now on the air. There's new things coming. Just I'm letting everybody know we have new content, new specials that are going to be coming out, and you're going to want to be around at least to be notified about those things. Summit Hawk says, if the Big 12 somehow gets Clemson plus Louisville, Pitt, and Virginia Tech, that Eastern Bloc could push value up to $45 million, in my opinion. You're on the same page with us. We think that's true. Immaculate or Moen, do you want to add anything to that? Immaculate's typing, so he didn't hear me.
Yeah, there's a guy in there.
I don't disagree with him. I mean, yeah, it's gonna, if you get somebody like Clemson, especially, that's really gonna push your value up. Pitt, great travel partner for West Virginia. Louisville, great basketball ad, great football ad.
I think that he's right. I mean, if I look at that 4, not that I necessarily think that 4 is coming, but with that 4, yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, you're getting into the markets that they want you in. You're getting brands. You're getting rivalries. Yeah, I think that once we see what happens with the ACC, then we look and see what the valuation of the Big 12 is. I think it's going up. How much? I don't know. We could throw out a bunch of different numbers and have a debate about it that has no answer. It's going to go up.
Well, if Prime sticks around, it's going to go up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So if he is able to stay 4 years, 5 years through the 2026 renegotiation of the CFP, I think they could renegotiate based on some of those changes. But let's see here. Moen Show says SDSU just needs to cut a $200 million check. So who is he actually saying there, people? Everybody raise your hand. You know the answer. Yeah, we're talking about SMU. So SDSU, get your guys together. Say you're going to subsidize your program for 10 years. You get no money, and then you get an invite to the Big 12. I don't think the Big 12 would do it. I know money is important right now, but I just don't think they would cross that Rubicon. Do you guys disagree with me?
Not until the ACC's situation's done. Big 12's not adding anybody until the ACC situation's done. No basketball brands, nobody else. You can't. It's too appetizing there. Summit Hawk was right. If you add that 4 schools, that just lifts you so much that nobody else could lift you, really. So you have to look at the ACC and then focus on elsewhere once that's no longer available.
Yeah, and to clarify earlier, I get why someone would want to say, let's bring in San Diego State. I want to go there, like as a visit, because San Diego is pretty amazing. I would not say any G5s right now are at the top of the list of what the Big 12 is looking at. That's ACC schools. There's some others to talk about maybe on the West at some point, but not right now. It's all ACC. It's what's going on with FSU. What's that going to break apart, or any other ones taking that on? So if I'm the Big 12, I'm purely looking for 4 schools out of the ACC once it gets broken. So that's pretty much it.
You know, Bomber, we need to find some Miami folks to bring in here and have a chat with. I haven't heard anything from any Miami personalities. Miami Hurricane, if they exist out there.
There's not a lot of them.
They remind me of Utah fans.
Oh my gosh, please.
Before.
And I bet
you
you
we got to find a Miami person, bring him in.
There were
like
three Utah people that would engage.
There's some Miami fans, and most of them don't live in Miami, I don't think.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how to find that. I don't know. Immaculate just explained his comment here. He says, I don't think any G5 now. And yeah, I think we can all reinforce there's no G5 ads on the horizon. UConn, Tulane, Memphis, none of those schools, Boise State. It's not that they're not deserving, but consolidation is happening. And in consolidation, you have things getting tighter and tighter, not bigger and wider. So I think that the talk about G5 schools even beginning again won't even start until the ACC is done and settled, done and dusted. Not just Florida State. I'm talking about the entire conference has something new to talk about. So.
I don't think we hear anything about it, San Diego State or any of these other G5s until we see some type of emerging or something new created out of the G5 to be the top G5. Whether that's the AAC growing or whatever that, but I think something's going to come out of that.
Them and the Mountain West should absolutely combine.
Yeah,
I don't know why that hasn't happened.
Once we have the A4 and once they change the divisional rules and you can have regional divisions, have more than two. Yeah, I think that's going to happen.
Summit Hawk says KU Colorado game is most likely at Arrowhead this fall. I think that'll be a big game. Yep,
they're playing at Arrowhead while they're building their stadium out, so that'll happen.
Very good. And I think most of your games you're going to have that you think you're going to be in one place. You could find out they're at a neutral site. I could easily see what Ute is talking about, how games could be pushed to Las Vegas, for instance, or Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely could see that happening. The Red River rivalry game has been played in Dallas for a while now, right? Didn't that finally settle in Dallas?
Yeah, that game's played in Dallas.
Okay, so that could eventually happen with the BYU-Utah game. I could see that becoming an annual in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I really could. I could see that happen. It would suck for us as fans, but it would be great for the programs, I think. All right, let's sort of do a final check-in here. We're almost 2 hours. That's about what we do on our Tuesdays. I just want to remind everybody we're doing a show tomorrow. I haven't got the playlist all sorted out yet, but I think I'll at least have one guest, somebody more important than me, to interview. So that'll be tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern. And then on Friday, we'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Join us, and we're going to be talking about all the stuff that we didn't catch in the early part of the week. You guys want to say anything about those two shows?
Depending upon who you bring on tomorrow, I haven't actually had a chance to speak with Miss Aurelian, so I might show up if you let me come in as well on that one. But
guy's a stud. He was awesome, wasn't he, guys?
Yep.
Yeah.
Seen him on a couple of shows now. He's pretty good.
Yeah, he is amazing. His long form answers were just nails. I was so impressed. Anyway, okay, let's see here. Get a couple more comments in here, and then I think we'll sign out. Replica says SMU was denied AQ revenue share from the playoffs, so I think the days of G5 schools moving up may be over. We don't know that for sure, right?
Yeah, like on the surface, it could look that way, and I get why someone would think that. But I think there might be a deeper movement going on, like a political movement, like it's kind of holding the ACC hostage, right? Like they're going to have to pay all that money to SMU because they made promises to SMU, and that was part of the cost that SMU was counting on for covering all their other things. So I think there might be a little bit more to that. I don't want to go in too far because that's just guessing, but we'll see how that plays out.
Okay. All right, let's do our wind down here. Let's start with you, Ute. What do you have to tell everybody tonight that they should take away from the show?
Well, I think the title of the show is apt here, is the Big 12 becoming a feeder league? My response to that would be no, because we've got good leadership in Brett Yormark, and I trust him to make the moves necessary to make us more competitive financially. And I think that we'll get there once the ACC disbands. So I'm pretty optimistic about it, actually. I just think that is something we need to talk about. It needs to be at the forefront of our minds, but it's a massively important topic and everything. So good insights from all you guys. So awesome.
All right, Immaculate.
Well, I think there's a lot going on. Just keep your eyes out, folks. Keep paying attention. And look at me on Twitter. We're following what's going on with the convention, with the NCAA right now, and I think that's once that breaks free, we're going to see a lot of movement. In terms of the Big 12, I'm just to say I've been told I'm a cynical optimist, and that's what I would suggest to folks: is be cynical about what you see, but also be an optimist. And you might just see things in a different view than what you do right now. And I think that there's a lot of potential for the Big 12. So that's it.
Love it. How about you, Moen?
I'll tell you something I learned about crawdaddies. Not only are they good fishing bait, they're also nature's roach clips.
It's true.
Is that it? You haven't promoted your hospital for a while. You want to push that really quick?
Yeah, if you didn't like the crawdad clip, you can give it to the James Cancer Hospital.
I used to have that link. I don't have that link posted up right now, but we'll get that link so you can share. There's a story behind Moen's request to donate money to that hospital. So, nothing else you want to say, Moen? You really?
But you just, I mean, if that's it. I just wanted to play the crawdad clip. I thought it was funny.
Okay.
It was pretty good.
All right, everybody. I'm sorry that we sort of stalled out here at the end. That's my fault. I'm the director, so we appreciate you sticking with us this long. Make sure you follow us all on Twitter, and then subscribe on YouTube. Consider becoming a member on YouTube. Just hit the join button, and I'll walk you through how to do that. And other than that, subscribe and turn on your notifications so you know when our next shows will be. And our next show is tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's all I got for you. Everybody else, stay out of trouble. Have a great night. Drive safe. Drink very smallly before you go to bed. And
Be careful.
we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. Peace out.